The twin suns of Argent 4 shone over a sea of golden grass. The land stretched endlessly, rolling under the orange sky like an ocean that never stopped moving. Out there, far from any city or colony, stood a single barn made of old wood and metal. Its walls were patched with steel plates and the paint had faded long ago. It looked lonely yet strong, like the man who lived there. His name was Elias Dane. Elias was a rancher, one of the last of his kind. While others left for crowded stations and shining worlds, he chose the quiet life. He raised bio-bison, creatures bred from old earth cattle but tough enough to survive alien winds. His days followed the same rhythm: feed the herd, check the fences, repair the machines, then sit by the barn as the suns dipped below the hills. He didn't need much. Peace was enough, but even peace has a sound. The wind, the hum of drones in the distance, the slow breathing of animals at dusk. It was all part of the song of the plains. Elias liked that song. It reminded him that he was still alive, even if the rest of the galaxy had forgotten this place. He had once been a soldier, long ago, in the Terran-Vorn War. Back then, his life was all noise and fire. When the war ended, he came here to Argent 4 to find silence. And for years he did, until the night the girl arrived. It began as an ordinary evening. Elias was locking the barn gates, checking the solar feed, when he saw a flash in the sky. At first he thought it was a meteor, but meteors didn't fall that slow, or leave a trail of fire that cut through the clouds like a wounded bird. He watched as the object disappeared behind a ridge. Moments later the ground trembled slightly, just enough to make the dust shift. Elias frowned. Crash landings were rare out here. No trade routes passed this close to the frontier. He went inside, grabbed his rifle, a heavy old-style weapon more useful for scaring off beasts than fighting anyone, and mounted his hoverbike. The engine coughed to life, whining softly. He rode toward the ridge. When he reached the crash site, smoke was rising from a half-buried drop pod. The metal still glowed from heat. Something inside moved. Elias hesitated. This wasn't his problem. He had left the days of rescuing strangers behind. But then he heard a sound, a soft cry, a human voice. He pulled the hatch open and a young woman fell into his arms. Her face was pale and covered with dust. She couldn't have been older than 20. Her clothes were torn, marked with burn stains. In one hand she clutched a broken data slate, its screen flickering weakly. "Please," she whispered. "Help me." Elias carried her back to the barn. He placed her on the cot in the small room beside the generator. His medical drone scanned her and gave a soft beep. Nothing fatal. Bruises, exhaustion, mild radiation from the pod's reactor. When she woke later, she looked around in fear, then confusion. "Where am I?" she asked. "My ranch," Elias said. "You came down hard." "Rest a while." She looked at him cautiously, her eyes sharp despite her weakness. "You're human?" "Last I checked," he said dryly. She gave a small, tired smile. "Good, I wasn't sure." He poured her a cup of water. "Name?" "Lyra Miles," she said. Was a settler from the North Range." Elias nodded, though something in her tone made him wonder. Settlers didn't fly drop pods. Settlers used slow cargo ships and ground transports. She wasn't telling the full truth, but he didn't push her. Not yet. Over the next few days, Lyra helped around the ranch. She insisted on working, even though Elias told her to rest. She cleaned the barn, repaired fence drones, even learned how to milk a bio-bison. A dangerous task for anyone unfamiliar with them. "You don't seem like a settler," Elias said one morning. She laughed softly. "And you don't seem like a simple rancher." He raised an eyebrow. "What makes you say that?"
"The way you move," she said.
"The way you check the horizon every few minutes." "You've been a soldier." Elias didn't answer. The silence between them said enough. One evening, as the suns dipped low and the plains turned copper, Elias found her outside the barn, working on her broken data slate. She looked nervous. When he approached, she quickly hid the device under a cloth. "You planning to tell me what that thing really is?" he asked quietly. Lyra bit her lip. "It's nothing you need to worry about." "I'll decide that," he said. Before she could reply, a low hum drifted through the air. Elias looked up. 3 small dots moved across the sky, scout drones, sleek and silver, heading straight toward them. Lyra froze. "They found me," she whispered. "Who?" Elias asked, his voice firm. "The Vorn Raiders," she said. "They attacked our convoy in orbit." I escaped with something they want back. Elias felt a cold weight settle in his chest. The Vorn hadn't been seen on Argent 4 in years. If they were back, it meant trouble. Big trouble. What did you take? He asked. Lyra hesitated, then held up the cracked data slate. It's not just information, it's a map. A route to something the Vorn are building. My mission was to deliver it to the Terran command relay before they caught me. Elias ran a hand over his beard. And you brought them right to my front door. I didn't mean to, she said, her voice shaking. I didn't have anywhere else to go. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum grew louder. The drones were closer now, maybe minutes away. Elias turned to her. You know how to shoot? She blinked. Yes. Good, you'll need to. They rushed into the barn. Elias pulled open a long metal crate revealing old weapons, relics from his soldier days. Lyra's eyes widened. He tossed her a small plasma pistol and loaded his own rifle. Stay behind cover, he said. They'll scan first, then strike. The first drone appeared above the ridge, scanning beams sweeping the field. Elias fired. The blast hit dead center, dropping the machine in a burst of sparks. The others split apart, diving low. Lyra aimed carefully and fired. Her shot clipped one drone's wing, sending it spinning into the dust. The last drone launched a missile. Elias rolled aside, the explosion rocking the ground. The barn shook, walls trembling. Smoke filled the air. When the dust cleared, the last drone hovered only a few meters away, weapon systems charging. Elias grabbed a metal rod from the ground and hurled it with all his strength. The rod pierced the drone's sensor core and it fell with a crash. Silence. The ranch was scarred. The barn's wall burned, one fence broken. But they were alive. Lyra stared at him, breathing hard. You saved us. Elias shook his head. Not yet. They'll send more. Those drones were scouts. She looked down, guilt heavy in her eyes. I'll leave. I don't want to bring danger here. Elias looked out toward the plains where smoke still rose from the wreckage. He sighed. You won't last a day out there alone. Besides, he picked up his rifle and slung it over his shoulder. I've fought worse. Lyra looked at him with a mix of fear and admiration. Why are you helping me? Elias stared at the horizon. The suns were setting, painting the sky blood red. Because once, he said quietly, someone helped me. That night the ranch was quiet again, but the peace felt thin, fragile. Elias sat by the barn, cleaning his rifle. Lyra slept inside, the data slate beside her. He watched the stars slowly appear one by one. Somewhere out there, war machines moved again. Humanity had known peace for a short time, but it was never meant to last. He looked at his old exo rig standing near the fence, its armor rusted but solid. He had built it for farming, but deep down, he knew it could still fight. Elias Dane, the man who came here to forget war, felt the fire return to his chest. If the Vorn were coming, he'd be ready, because out here on the edge of space, a simple rancher could still remind the stars what it meant to be human. The first light of dawn spilled across the plains of Argent 4, touching the fields with a pale gold glow. The night had been long and silent, but Elias Dane had not slept. He sat on the barn steps, cleaning his old rifle again and again. The smell of burnt metal from the drone wreck still hung in the air. Inside the barn, Lyra Miles was awake too. She sat near the warm engine core, working quietly on her cracked data slate. Every few seconds, she glanced at Elias through the open door. There was something about the way he sat, calm but ready, that made her feel both safe and guilty. She wanted to thank him, but words felt too small. He had risked his life for a stranger. When the suns rose higher, Elias finally spoke. Those scouts were Vorn, he said. If they sent machines, a raider ship won't be far behind. Lyra nodded. They'll keep searching until they find me. Elias stood and stretched his back. Then we make sure they don't. She looked at him in surprise. You're not running? Run where? This is my land. He looked toward the horizon. And you're not leaving alone. Preparing for war by mid-morning, the ranch looked nothing like the peaceful place it had been. Elias turned every tool and machine into part of a defense. The irrigation lasers that once watered the fields now stood ready as weapons. The fence drones were reprogrammed to scan for intruders. Even the bison herd collars were changed to release short EMP bursts when triggered. Lyra worked beside him without complaint. She fixed circuits, mounted a turret on the roof, and helped refill the old energy cells. You've done this before, Elias said, watching her connect power lines. My father taught me, she said softly. He was a mechanic during the war. He gave a slow nod. Good teacher, then. As they worked, the heat rose. Dust swirled around them and the barn's solar panels gleamed. By noon, the place looked like a fortress built from both old earth steel and frontier grit. Finally, Elias walked toward his exo-rig, a tall farming mech standing silent beside the fence. The metal giant was rusted and scarred, but its limbs were strong. Lyra followed him. That thing still works? He smiled slightly. Depends who's driving. He climbed into the cockpit. The machine hummed as it woke, its sensors flickering to life. The sound echoed like thunder across the plains. Lyra couldn't help but stare. For the first time, she saw Elias not as a tired rancher, but as a warrior who had simply laid down his weapon. Until now. The sky burns again late in the afternoon. The first sign came. A streak of silver cutting through the sky. Elias saw it through his scope. Ship, he said. Low orbit. Probably a raider dropcraft. Lyra's face paled. They found us, Elias spoke calmly. Then we do what humans do best, stand our ground. Minutes later, the air filled with a deep roar. A black-armored Vorn ship broke through the clouds and landed beyond the ridge, its claws digging into the soil. From its belly dropped a swarm of insect-like raiders, machines shaped like living armor, their red eyes glowing. Lyra gripped her weapon tighter. How many? Too many, Elias said. But enough for a fair fight. He powered up the exo-rig. The ground trembled as the metal giant moved forward. The first wave came fast. Plasma bolts streaked across the field, setting the grass on fire. Elias swung the exo-rig's arm and crushed 2 raiders in one blow. The machine's servos screamed as he turned, firing its shoulder cannon. The blast tore through another group, scattering their parts across the dust. Lyra fired from the barn roof. Her shots were precise and sharp, hitting weak spots she could barely see. She moved with skill. Not a frightened settler anymore, but a soldier's daughter who remembered every lesson her father taught her. Keep low, Elias shouted. I can handle it, she replied, reloading. More drones swarmed in, faster and deadlier. The ranch fence exploded as one missile hit it. The animals cried out, running toward the far hills. Elias knew they couldn't win by just holding ground. He switched to voice command. Activate perimeter EMP. The collars on the fleeing bison flashed blue, releasing waves of energy that swept across the field. The nearest raiders froze midair, their circuits frying. Lyra took the chance to shoot the rest down. Nice trick, she said over the comms. Comes in handy during stampedes, Elias replied. The last stand, but the Vorn weren't done. The main ship opened again, and a much larger machine stepped out. A Vorn war construct towering twice the size of Elias's exo-rig. Its armor glowed red and its voice hissed through the speakers. Human combatant detected. Surrender the courier or be destroyed. Elias's grip tightened on the controls. I've had enough of aliens telling humans what to do. He charged. The 2 giants met with a crash that shook the ground. Sparks flew as metal hit metal. The Vorn swung a plasma blade, slicing through part of the rig's shoulder. Elias countered, grabbing the alien's arm and driving a hydraulic punch into its chest. Inside the cockpit, alarms blared. Lyra ran toward the fight, trying to help, but Elias shouted, Stay back! Get to the transmitter! But, Uga! Tears burned her eyes, but she turned and ran toward the small relay tower behind the barn. She connected her data slate and began the upload. The signal bar crawled slowly upward. Outside, the fight raged on. The Vorn war construct pinned Elias down, its blade inches from the cockpit. Your kind is weak, it hissed. Elias gritted his teeth. Maybe, but we build strong machines. He hit the emergency release. The exo-rig's chest opened, exposing its fusion core. He grabbed the manual detonator. Let's see you handle old-fashioned human engineering, he growled. He pressed the trigger. The explosion lit the plains like a second sunrise. The Vorn war construct was torn apart, its metal burning bright against the darkening sky. The shockwave knocked Lyra off her feet, but she held onto the transmitter cable. The signal reached full strength. A blue light blinked, transmission complete. Lyra looked up. Smoke covered the place where the exo-rig had stood. Her heart pounded as she stumbled forward. Elias! She cried. For a moment there was only silence. Then from the dust a shape moved. Elias, burned and bruised but alive, dragged himself out of the wreckage. Lyra ran to him and helped him stand. "You crazy man," she said, tears in her eyes. "You did it," he gave a weak smile. "Didn't have time to finish my fence anyway." After the fire by nightfall, the sky was quiet again. The Vorn ship lay in ruins. Smoke drifted into the upper winds, fading under the stars. Lyra and Elias sat by the barn, what was left of it, watching the horizon. The relay tower blinked in the distance, sending its signal across light years to the Terran fleet. Help would come soon. "You could go back with them," Elias said softly. "Start fresh. You're young. The fleet needs people like you." She looked at him. "What about you?" He shook his head. "This is home. Always has been." Lyra smiled faintly. "You'll be alone." Elias looked at the stars. "Not really. Out here, the sky keeps you company. And besides, I've got work to do. The planes still need tending." They sat in silence for a long time. The wind blew gently, carrying the smell of ash and grass. The war might return one day, but for now, peace had found its way back, fragile but real. When the Terran rescue ships arrived the next morning, Lyra stood at the door of the barn. She turned to Elias. "I'll make sure they know what you did," she said. "The fleet will want to thank you." He smiled, pulling his hat low over his eyes. "Just tell them a rancher did his job." She nodded, trying not to cry, then walked toward the waiting shuttle. Elias watched until the ship disappeared into the sky. Then he turned back to his land, his broken fences, his quiet barn, and the endless golden plains. He picked up a spanner and sighed. Back to work, the suns rose higher, warm and bright. Somewhere far above, the stars shimmered like witnesses, and as the wind carried the sound of his hammer against metal, it was clear that the spirit of humanity, strong, stubborn, and endlessly hopeful, was alive and well on Argent 4. Because even on the edge of the galaxy, one simple rancher had reminded the universe what it truly meant to be human.